Everybody, I'm Yvonne Williams with Back to Earth Creations, and in this video I want to show y'all a way to make a stiff wire bangle bracelet very similar to this one. This one was made with around 6 to 7 millimeter square beads that are glass and 18 gauge square and half round wires. The one we're going to be working on today is going to be using these little dyed howlite turquoise looking beads that are 12 millimeters by 4 millimeters, but really you could use whatever kind of stone you like, stone or glass or bead. The first step you'll want to do is to take your 18 gauge square wire. Mine is Parawire brand. There'll be links to all the tools and materials down in the video description below. I really like this brand of wire because even with their bare looking copper, it's still covered in a clear enamel that'll keep it from tarnishing. That, in my experience, after 8 or 9 years of wearing my favorite piece, still has not worn off. So I give it my stamp of approval for sure. Now, you're going to want to make sure that your wire stays nice and square and straight all the way down. So I'm going to take a pair of pliers and hold one end of it, and then I'm going to take my nylon jaw pliers and I'm going to grip it and just kind of slide it through. And what I'm doing here is I'm trying to keep that one same facet lined up the whole length. Now this also serves to work harden it, but you can see now the nice thing about that square wire, it has such a nice flash to it, and that helps me kind of keep track of making sure there's no twists and kinks and stuff. And so now I'm going to turn it just one side rotation, and now I'm going to do it the other way, attempting to keep it straight from both perspectives. And I'm going to do it once more because I really don't feel like there's a such thing as overkill when you're trying to get your wire nice and straight. And so now you can see the difference between straightened wire and unstraightened wire. It's kind of a big difference, and the straightened is so much easier to work with. So let's do that again to the other piece, just real quick. And you can see here my nylon jaw pliers are all kinds of like torn up, but they still work. Whoop. This is why I'm gripping really close to the end, because that way if I do end up scraping off any of the enamel, it's not the end of the world, because I'm probably going to be trimming that end off anyways. Gripping again from a different angle and just running it through. There we are. I feel pretty good about that. So now that we've straightened both of our wires, normally like on this piece here, I actually cut 3 pieces of the 18 gauge square. And here we have it at about 12 inches long, just to give myself a lot of extra. You really only need maybe 9 or 10 inches to do a bracelet. But on these beads, the reason why I only have 2 18 gauge wires cut out is they do not thread through my bead. And that makes me very sad, because on these beads it threaded through just fine. See how nice and easy that it was? But you don't want to have to force it, and you certainly don't want to have to re-dream the hole in all of your beads. So what I have here is just some 20 gauge round wire, and I'm going to pull off about 12 inches of that as well. With it still on the spool, I'm just going to go ahead and straighten it and work harden it a bit. All of the wire that I get through from the Parawire brand is dead soft, and I'm just going to snip it off. So it can do with a little bit of work hardening when you want it to end up nice and stiff like this. And so now from here you can see the 20 gauge fits on much more easily. Let's see if we can't get the camera focus in where we want it to. Now the third kind of wire we're going to be using in today's project is 18 gauge half round, also by Parawire. And you can see here it's spooled up with the flat side facing out. And you're going to want, I do about a yard of the half round. So straighten my wire off to the side. And you can see here, this is the flat side. See the way it reflects like that? And then this is the round side. The reflection is just a bit different. And you can tell with your fingers too. So I'm just going to flip this around to where it's the, the round side's kind of facing me. This is another thing you can do, just gripping with your pliers. And then just kind of using your fingers almost as a draw block. I've got a little bit of a twist going on here. So I'm just going to grip it. And instead of using your hands, you could totally use your nylon jaw pliers as well. I just want to get the natural bend happening in the correct direction. So you can see I have my pliers kind of offset at an angle. This helps kind of force that natural bend out of it. Beep, so I can scatter my beads everywhere. Sorry, so that it kind of just behaves in the right way, and this keeps me from accidentally wrapping it backwards. So I also do have some little, they're kind of around between a 3 and a 4 millimeter rondel here, and I like using those, as you can see here on this one, as little decorative end caps to the beads. Those are completely optional. So we're going to start by having our 20 gauge wire and I'm going to just coil down one of the ends to behave as a stopper in no particular way. I mean, you could just bend it off, but I want to make sure that my beads are not going to slide off the end here. And so I'm going to place a rondel and then one of my stone beads, and now I'm going to place 2 rondels, 1, 2, and then a stone bead. And sometimes the beads like this might not be perfectly drilled through, so just try it from the other end. And now 2 rondels. And the reason why I'm doing 2 rondels is because we'll have one butting up on each end. So this one goes with this bead, and then this next rondel, get in the hole, it goes with this bead. And I make most of my bracelets to about a maybe 7 to 8 inch length. So you do you though, just however. And so I'm going to put on a little bit more than what I think I'm going to need, because I can always take it back off later. But I'm using these guys as a guide to keep my, I don't know if y'all can hear my neighbor's strangled sounding rooster. I don't know why he just sounds like that. I'm going to be using these as a guide to keep the side wires nice and parallel. So whenever I'm selling stuff out of the booth as well, I like to kind of keep it at a like maybe 7 inch length, because with this style of bracelet I can't remove anything from it without disassembling the piece. But I can add, and that's what we have these little jump rings over here for, I can add some rings to it to make it a little longer. That way it'll fit up to an 8 or 9 inch wrist. Okay. So I know there's going to be some expansion with the wrapping in between. How the wrapping is here, that adds, you know, almost a 1/4 of an inch per set. So I'm just going to get myself up to like 6 inches, and then we'll start wrapping. Now also, some of these guys have seriously misaligned holes, so I'm going to skip those ones. I want to stay with the ones that are nice and center drilled as much as possible. Which of course I say that, and now I keep running into a whole bunch of them that are really poorly drilled. Oh, that one's pretty okay. So they don't have to be perfect, but you know, the best ones you can go with, the better. That's also something that's exasperated less in a smaller bead, like these square ones that we used, but on these longer beads that can really amount to some serious misalignment. Just a couple more now. And also, just some wires strung up like this through some beads is a super pretty basic bracelet. And you could do a coiled end like this, or you could do a wrapped loop on each end and then just do a clasp and bend it around. But we're working on something a little bit more advanced today, if you want to challenge yourself. Because the goal with this bracelet is to have it be super tidy. And I am not good at doing tidy stuff, y'all. Like, at all. Like, I'm much better at, like, wild spirals and messy things. So this bracelet design really challenges me as an artist. Okay. And so on this last bead, we're just going to add, boop, 1 rondel. And I'm just going to coil down here on the end. That way I can make sure none of my beads fall off. And this is why I gave myself so much extra wires, because I know I'm going to be coming through and trimming these little ends off. So there we are. I'm going to set these other beads just off to the side for now, since we're more or less strung up with everything that we'll need, I think. Now I also have, that I completely forgot to add over here, 2 4mm and 2 3mm copper beads. So speaking of trimming the ends off, just going to go ahead and snip that. This is another reason why I don't recommend doing your first project out of sterling silver or gold filled, because there's going to be learning curve like this. So I've just snipped off the end, and I'm threading on a 4mm, and I'm threading on a 3mm bead. And then I'm going to coil that end back down. I'm going to do the same thing to the other end. Though, actually, I'm not going to do the other end yet. I'll just start from this end, because I may end up needing to take a couple of these off, and I'll just save myself the wire. So I'm going to set these little fellas off to the side. And for those of you who are wondering what I use for my bead trays, Crystal Light containers make excellent chainmail canisters. So the lids, I'll just pop them off for whatever project I'm doing. But they make great little trays for holding your beads. Okay, so now we have our half round wire. And we're going to take our flat nose pliers. And I'm going to do a bend just here at the end, a couple millimeters in from the end of the wire, and just a little bit into the tip. You want a thickness on your pliers that's comparable to the thickness of our 18 gauge wire. Excuse me. So now that we have this bent like that, just a nice little hook. We're going to come in and I'm going to hook between 2 of these. Like, see how these are kind of lined up? I want to hook in between these 2 rondels and start wrapping around that center point there. But something that could make this a lot easier for everyone involved is if I had some clamps, which I'm not currently seeing any around me. I'm gonna have a sip of my coffee, maybe that'll help. Nope, I still don't see any clamps. But you could clamp this on the end, you could tape this, you could do a lot of different things, but I'm going to make this super difficult on myself, and I'm not going to use any clamps or any tape. But the reason I'm starting in between 2 beads as opposed to the loose end is this is going to establish a nice, like, there's a bead behaving like a spacer on either side. Honk, says the train. Yeah, sorry, the outdoor noises are like super prevalent in a lot of my more recent videos, at least at the time of recording, because it's been such beautiful weather and I want to keep the windows open, but I live like in a pretty urban neighborhood, so there's like, you can hear like my neighbors yelling and the trains and the cars, but you can also hear like the chickens and the bugs and stuff, so trade-offs. So I'm just kind of, you can see this is really flopping around. So I'm going to see if I can't find a clamp to attach this to. It's not my favorite kind of clamp, but it should work. Just a little clamp like this. And again, the clamping is a lot easier whenever you have all square wire, because the round wires, all they want to do, it seems, is just flop around. You can also use tape, like if you have some masking tape or painter's tape or something like that. But yeah, that helps a whole lot, just to keep it from flip-flopping around all over the place. Clamps provide a little bit of an extra hand, so I just have it clamped on like that. And I'm still coming in between these two beads. And now instead of wrapping the wire around, I'm actually just going to fold my whole project. So there's one rotation, and I'm going to do a second rotation. And if I didn't have these beads in there behaving like spacers, it would be a lot more tendency to like kind of pinch to be more narrow up here at the top. So I'm actually going to flip this back around. Sorry, I didn't mean to go off camera. The way that I came. And I'm going to come in here with my flat nose pliers and just smoosh. Oh yeah, I also forgot my neighbor's getting like house construction done too, so we get to listen to that. That'll be fun. The nice cacophonous background music. And so I just kind of keep wrapping, and so there's a third rotation, and I'm just going to squeeze down. Really? A second train? And just double checking and making sure that everything's kind of fitting in the way that it goes. And I'd like to do 4 rotations in between each. So I'm just going to bring this around and flipping it so that this side wire isn't in the way. I'm just getting a nice good squish going on there. And I'm actually going to lift this back out. I want to trim it so that it lands like how this one doesn't exceed that center mark. I don't want this one to exceed the center mark either. Because what we're going to be doing, snip, is taking our bent nose pliers and just training that little tail right down into the bracelet. Just like that. And that way it's going to be a lot less likely to snag anything, because this is the back side. It's going to be worn against the flesh. So you certainly don't want anything that's going to be poking you. So there is that. And that's how it looks from the front. So nice and tidy. You can also, I do most of my squishing from this side. Now's a perfect opportunity to come in and give it a good squish from the other. And it just keeps everything nice and rigid and even. So now I'm going to go through and I'm going to do this again in between all of these other beads, and then I will meet y'all right back here to show you how to finish the ends. So here you can see if you're having some problems with like spreading more than you would like just for an example, like if your wires came out looking kind of like that, something that I do to get it to straighten back out is I take my bent nose pliers, or not bent nose, flat nose pliers, and I'm taking it, and I'm not really squeezing the wire at all. I'm just bringing it and like holding it and then smushing with the side. So like you don't want to squeeze and mar up the wire that you're using as a guide, but it lets you just get in there and kind of like smush it down. Smushing is a very scientific technique. Like industry term right there. And then I'm just going to lift that up just a bit so I have room to get my pliers in and snip. And then we're going to come in with the bent nose pliers, the actual bent nose pliers this time, and just tuck those little ends in. Just like that. On both sides, just the way we had done before. And again, it's a little farther away from my bead and stuff than I'd like it to be. You can either scooch it down with your nails, or you can bring it in with your pliers. And that's the inside side, and that's the outside side. You can see it's still pretty loose down here on the end. I've determined I'm going to want to use 7 beads. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'll have 5, 6, and 7 before I finish it off. But so far I'm super pleased with how that's looking. To give you guys, just from some frame of reference, the length and size. So I'm going to do 2 more wraps and then I'll meet you all back here again. Also, just something to keep in mind too, a little bit more troubleshooting. You do want to make sure, if you're using square beads, to keep the square sides nice and flat and even, and you want to avoid any twisting in this side wire. Because again, you want the flat sides of the square wire to fit up against the flat sides of the square beads. That's part of what helps this to look so kind of clean and meticulous. We've come down to the end, and I don't need this extra segment of beads and stuff here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to snip off that end that we had looped around and just slide the extra beads right off the end. And now I'm going to slide on the 4mm and the 3mm round beads. I'm adding these because I want something to be able to taper down off the end. So you can kind of see how that's happening. It just gives something a little bit more gradual of a taper. That's not just like a strict, rigid, you know, like 90-degree bend off the end. So I'm going to set that down. I'm taking my half round wire and I'm going to do that same little fold we've been doing this whole time. Just bending it around that part of my pliers, and you'll get the hang of what's too thick and what's too thin. It's actually, I gave myself a pretty stingy hook there. I could have been more generous with that. And now from here, I'm gripping pretty firmly because I want this to not slide off its track like that. Like if it pops one way or the other, I want this to stay nice and centered. But as I wrap this, I'm going to keep it shrinking down to a nice little point. 2, 3 wraps. And again, this is a lot easier if you have all 3 wires are square, because then you don't have this center circle wire, round wire being like derp, just sliding up right out of the way. Okay. So there we go. I feel pretty pleased with that. Just going to wrap this guy around the back. And I'm going to come in and smush this down. And that really helps it to hold its rigidity a little bit more. I'm going to go ahead and trim this end off. And this is just the way that I'm doing it, guys. If you have a way that you think that you'd prefer, do that. Experiment a bit. That's the fun of all of this, is trying something new. Okay, so you can see, and there's a little bit more spread there, right there, than what I would like. So again, you can just take that same technique and kind of just use your pliers to jam it up against your other beads. I'm going to use my bent nose pliers to come in here and try to swinch that down just a little bit more. That way it sits a little bit more in line with what everything else is doing. And tuck that tail in. There we go. It's not the cleanest work I've ever done, but I'm not horribly disappointed in it. Smush it some more. Smushing really helps tidy everything up. That end still just sticks out a little bit more than I want it to, but I'm going to try my best to keep that, to not let that drive me crazy. So now I'm going to take this round wire, and I'm actually going to use my thumbnail to force it into a very clean 90-degree bend. And now I'm going to wrap around the 2 18-gauge square wires. And you can actually use your pliers to hold it in place nice and tight. And I'm just going to smush that like that. And with this little bit of tail at the end, I'm actually going to make a little spiral. Let me see if I can't find, I have some ultra petite tip, there they are, round nose pliers, and you can see the difference here between these round nose and these round nose. So whenever I'm doing delicate detailed work, I really like using my petite round nose. So I'm just going to come in here, grab it as close to the tip of the wire and the tip of the pliers as I can. Also, I'm totally self-conscious of like my stained and, you know, unmanicured fingers, but I'm a gardener, I'm a painter, and just an all-around messy person, so please don't let it bother you. I really do bathe, I promise. So we finish it with just a little decorative coil, just like that. Ooh, so pretty. So now we get to come and do this same thing on the other end. But I worry that I did not give myself enough space, enough wire on this end. So maybe next time I'll give myself 14 inches of core wire instead of just 12. That way I have a little bit more room to wrap with. But yeah, so everything's coming along kind of nicely. I'm going to take my half round wire and do a little bit of a bend. Hook that on, making sure that it's on the front side. I try to keep all my loose ends on the same side and try to keep them as unloose as possible. So I'm just bending around. I'm using my fingers a lot for pressure here. And just cinching down. Ugh, good gravy. Yeah, I actually think I'm just going to leave this side open. Yeah, let me slide this off. I'm going to go ahead and trim off that bit of work that I did just now, because I think this might work out better if I just leave myself a little bit longer of a tail. And just start wrapping like this. That way I've got, you know, that longer bit of tail to cinch down with to keep the side from bulging out later on. I just realized I was focusing on my work so much I don't know whether I was on camera or not. So I apologize for any time I'm kind of wandering off camera. I really do want you guys to be able to see what I'm doing, I promise. Okay, so from here, I am going to go ahead and give it a solid smush just to see what happens. And so now, yeah, I'm actually going to fold this side up. I'll try to encourage that down just a little bit more. How many wraps do we do? I did 4 wraps on this end, so there we are. And just snip that flat. And now I'm going to take my bent nose pliers, grab this wire. I'm so sorry for the incessant nail gun noise. It's been going on for 2 days. I have no idea what they're building. Eep. Ouch. Okay. So yeah, just gonna cinch that down like that. And I'm gonna try to keep this tucked so that it's not poking out and bothering anybody. There we go. Okay, so yeah, I don't have a whole lot of wire to work with down on this end with that 20 gauge core wire, so I'm just going to take it and I'm going to keep bending it around same way that we did before. Yep. Yeah, so I don't think we get a cute little spiral on this end. You know, I changed my mind. We are going to have a cute... Oh, sorry, I really did go off camera that time. So yeah, I only get 1 rotation out of it, but I'm still insistent on having a cute little spiral. So, not perfectly symmetrical, but hey, to the other end. but it's art. What do you want? So yeah, just cinching that around. Flatten it down nicely with our nylon gel pliers. And so now from here, we have lots of loose wire at the end. And to keep it, the whole bracelet is pretty streamlined. So to keep it nice and, you know, continue that motif, I'm going to do 1 finger width of wire off of each end. And I'm going to open that up just a bit, because we have some choices here. I could come and spiral it outwards, or I could spiral them inwards and have them be layered. Considering this will probably be sitting on this part of the hand, I'd rather it be wider than thicker, so I'm going to have them spiral outwards. And I'm going to use my thicker round nose pliers for this. Let me zoom in just a hair. And I'm going to make these just large enough that I will be able to fit a jump ring through it. Just coming down with a little spiral on each side like that. Just like that. And now for the other side. Now those longer bits of 18 gauge wire that we just cut off to make these nice and short, I'm going to show you how to make a clasp with those. Excuse me. And so again, we can come in, kind of flatten, secure everything down with our nylon gel pliers. Excuse me again. So here we have just a couple of inches of the 18 gauge square wire. I'm going to take my petite nosed round nose pliers, kind of cinch it around, and you can see these guys, they're coming off their hinge a little bit, but that's why I get the box hinges, so that they won't break. And you just fold it around like that, and then you can actually come in and use the box hinge of the pliers. You can see how it's just kind of squeezed in there, and just squeeze that down nice and petite, and then flatten it out so there's nothing poking out on the sides. And then I'm going to come in here using the thickest part of my large round nose pliers and just bend it around to make a nice little shepherd hook. And that bent a little too far around. You can open it up a hair. And then again, maybe like a generous finger width. Snip off the end there. And grabbing as close to the tip of the pliers as I can. Just come around. Yeah, and that's a little bit longer of a stem than what I want, so I'm just going to trim just a little bit off of right there. And then continue bending around. There we go. Flatten it out with your pliers. And so now from here, I have some rings. And I'm going to open 2 of them and then close 2 of them. Then I'm going to open this one, and I need to open 1 more, possibly 2 more. So let's see. So with these loops that we've made here on the end, I'm going to thread one through, and I'm going to thread two through. And then I'm going to open up one more. Excuse me. I always try not to, but I swear I end up sneezing in every single video. So I'm hooking this open ring through that one, and that one, and then through our clasp. And I'm going to close it. So there we are. I like a clasp that has a lot of movement so you can bend it however which way you need. So now over here on this end, opening one and opening two, hooking through our little ends here, on both sides. And now I'm going to take one open with one closed on it and hook it through the both of them and close, and then through the both of, or through that one and then close. So now, and something that you could do if you don't want this to be a bracelet, you could have this be a necklace piece by just bending it this way. And the way that I do that is I use my fingers pressure here and then pulling up on my fingers. Different things. You can really give this a nice, like, gentle curve. Or you could shape it around like a piece of PVC pipe and make it into a choker if you want it to sit flush against the neck. But for the most part, I'm going to keep it the way that it is and take just anything round. This is a stack of little organizers. And just gently, because we've got these longer straight beads, bend and shape this around our mandrel. And the last thing you want to do at this point is force it and have one of the beads break in half. Which on a shorter, bead you don't really have to worry about, but on anything longer like this, especially if it's a softer gemstone, you don't want to snap it. But yeah, so there we go. There's our bangle. And you can open it up a little bit more. You can bend it to be a little less of a perfect circle to have it go right around your wrist. And the clasp is more for just extra security. I've just got it hooked on there, and then I'm just going to squeeze that nose of it down. And that way you can be very rambunctious and not have to worry about your bracelet coming off. But there you are, guys. Hey everybody, thanks so much for joining me for this tutorial. I do hope that it was helpful. If you have any questions, comments, or ideas, I'd love to hear from you. If you enjoy my free tutorials, my daily free tutorials, and would like to support the creation of more of them, as well as participate in my fairy house giveaways, my monthly craft crates, and all the different things that we do here at Back to Earth Creations, please check me out on Patreon. There's a link down in the video description below. Sorry, I'm kind of off-center camera because like right here is like super bright sun. So also, if you make something from one of my tutorials and would like to share pictures of it to me, you can share it to my wall on Facebook. I don't guess today is going to be a good day for filming, but yeah, you can share it to my wall on Facebook, and that's Back to Earth Creations. Again, there's links down below, or you can tag me on Instagram, links down below. So before they pull out like a 3-ring circus and start making even more noise outside, I'm gonna go. But thanks again for hanging out with me, and I'll see y'all around. Happy crafting. Bye.